too long. We are the children of Israel. We are Bani Israel.
That's right.
We are the biblical Israelites.
Well, so we can come out of this captivity and start worshipping God as we're intended to. You believe in the Bible, yeah?
Yeah. That's all one guy called Ambassador.
Yeah.
He's Nazarite scrolls.
Okay. And that's important. What should I ask you? If I ask you, what's you're mixed, yeah, but then so that and if I'm saying Jamaica and
England.
And England. So which side? Which is it? Were your mum, your dad? What?
My mum's from England.
Yeah.
My dad's from Jamaica.
Okay, so your dad's from Jamaica. Now, have you ever heard of the Israelites? Do you believe in the Bible?
Yeah.
So now, and has anyone ever told you you're an Israelite?
No.
Okay, so now you're going to learn something new today. And this is a blessing for you, not for anyone else. And that's what I said. Thousands of people are going to walk past us today. But you believe in what's written. So the fact that you've seen us and you said, well, let me go and hear what they're saying is something all in itself. We can't make you start. Did I hold your hand? Did I come and pull you back? Okay, so now, what I'm going to tell you from today, that's my father, that's my dad, and we're from Jamaica. Now, do you know how we got to Jamaica? Do you know the history of Jamaica?
Slaves, the plantations.
Exactly.
I know about the rebellions. I know about Haiti being like, people say that white people emancipated the black people. The black people rebelling that emancipated the black people.
Right.
History was written by the people that are in the power.
That's right. Because most people who write their history, they write it from the point of victory. So say if I'm writing my history, I'm not going to tell you when I lost, but that's not true. Because Israelites, who we are, our people, when we wrote our history, we wrote our wins and our losses. Do you know why? Because if I want my children not to make the same mistakes I did, they need to know why I failed, what I did wrong. You get it?
Do you know what? I read so much as well. I'm like a sponge, Jenny, and like my family and I say to me like, oh, why are you reading that? Why are you reading that? So don't you want to know about this?
Exactly.
But I always feel a thirst.
That's right. Right, and you're not going to be able to quench it until you return back to your culture.
Your culture.
You see,
right, that's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the whole.
Oh yeah, and it cannot be filled, right? Because it's our culture that's missing. So that's the reason why you feel that hole there, or you feel that thirst. You feel that thirst for knowledge, and the reason why you're feeling it, especially now in this day and this age, is because the Creator is waking up His people, right? Just like He promises in our writings. So our ancestors wrote the so-called Bible. The Bible is not religious. The Bible was written by the Israelites, for the Israelites, to the Israelites, right? That book was written by one nation of people, right? Now what the Western powers did, they took our writings, right? And then they said, because all the promises that are in there are only to the house of Israel. It's not to the other nations, right? But what they did, they took it and then said the promises that are in there are for everybody. It's called universalism, right? The other word is Catholicism, because that's what Catholicism means. It means all encompassing, all embracing. But the book itself is all about Israelites. It's all about Israelites. And about the work the Creator is going to do through the Israelites to bring peace on the earth, because we're the only ones that can bring peace on the earth. The other nations can't do it; it's not in them, right? So that's what it's about. So when you look at this, you know you take captive, right? And when you see this, the question you have to ask the question: why did the Creator allow that to happen?
Why did God allow?
Why did He allow it to happen? Because that's not normal. What they did was not normal. And it's not that it's not normal. You know the thing is, it's not that it's not normal. It's that even after they did what they did, they still haven't repaired the damage. They still haven't told you who you are, told you what your language is, where you came from. They still haven't done none of that. And it's not just it's not about the money, it's about you knowing who you are.
See, that's the knowledge, isn't it? That's it. I don't want no money. I don't want nothing like that. Give me the information.
Right, because once they know, once you know who you are, right, and the spirit of the faith comes upon you, you are going to take over and you
That's
are going
right,
to
right.
That's what they know.
You can't serve two masters.
That's right.
You can't serve God. And the government, they know that. Right. That's what throughout history. Level of prior to that. They've lied to us. Lied. Right. What second there? You live in a round circle, you live in a flat plane. You live in a round circle. That's what we're told all our lives. Right from the time we were at school. Why? Because the flat earth is inconsistent with the Big Bang. You can't have a Big Bang theory with round planet after round planet, then you've got the Earth that's flat.
Right.
How can that be?
Right, and the thing is,
They don't lie to us, everything they say is a lie.
that is on the outskirts of knowledge. For the Israelites, it's not about what they thought in regards to the shape of the planet. It's what they thought was in regards to the Israelites.
That's
right.
I'm not referring to that
your
because it's the
ancestry.
most important thing.
Whenever I ask anyone who looks like you, where are you from? What are you from? They say I'm black. Now, our people say black. What airport can you go to book a flight to black
They want you to feel small.
What airport can you go to?
If you have no God, you can't serve
You see what I
government.
mean? So you understand at least that you're Jamaican. So that's my problem. I know we come from the Caribbean, but the point is we need to drop what they've taught us in society. And yeah, what he's saying is true, but there's more important things, especially for you, who's an Israelite. Get me Deuteronomy 28, because the first question you should be asking me now is, how can I prove to you you're an Israelite? Because you've read the Bible before.
Yeah, I've read the
You
Bible,
grew up in
I've been
Christianity.
for the church.
Yeah.
I've had different people say history. That's
Okay.
you know,
I
and
understand
I
that.
still thirst for life.
Knowledge and truth, yeah, that's right, because in the church, they don't teach. I was in the church for 24, 25 years. Yeah, for my whole life practically.
Is it not?
I grew up in church, hold on.
it not enough to
And the
believe in
point
God?
is, I never learned anything from church.
It's not enough.
And then when I
I'll
left
take that
church
risk.
to read
I'll
the
take
truth
that
and
risk.
get the understanding,
I'll take that chance.
then I started to
I'll take
understand
that
it.
chance.
So now when I'm teaching, I understand the Bible. And like I said to you, it's not.
I'd rather take the chance than be divided between all these different religions because that is the man as well. That is the man as well. This can't be anything.
So now what I'm going to tell you,
You can't
for
believe
one,
anything.
you're an Israelite. So
You
even
believe
if
that there's a
anything
God,
else
there's a
comes
creator,
in,
good enough for me.
remember, even if it's in the back of your mind, remember, you've been told you're an Israelite. So even if you research it, what I'm going to explain to you now, when you try to put all that is, you don't understand when the Most High, that is distraction. That's what it is. As soon as, and that's 100%, because what happens as soon as the Most High, as soon as God, who they call God, starts to speak to his children, you're a sheep of the Most High, you're a child of God. Not by choice, you didn't choose to be one. He made you an Israelite. By this, because you're the seed of your father, and your father's an Israelite who was in Jamaica. Now, the point of the matter is, how can I prove to you that you're an Israelite? And that's what you should want to know. So let us.
All I want to know is where.
And
When I was this big, you know.
Yeah.
When I was this big, people say, "Oh, you were too deep as a child." I wasn't too deep.
You
My
weren't too
mind was thinking, "What am I? Who am I? Why is this happening? Why is it? Why? Do you know what I mean? Why is society treating me like this?"
Now, why do you like that?
Do you know what I did? I joined the British Army. Listen to this for the British lesson. I joined there. The first night I was there, there were two other black guys. They put us in the same room. They put a sign above the room saying, "The ghetto."
And you know, I'm going to teach you something. Do you know what the word ghetto means? People. You know what the put okay, and so what they're doing is not abnormal to me, because I know what the word ghetto means. I know the history of the word and where it's from. So you have to learn. So what I'm going to teach you now is something called etymology. The word etymology means the history the history of a word. So you know words change. So like the word gay, back in the days, gay meant happy. Yeah. And now the gay relates to homosexual. So the history of a word is important. So you know what people are talking about and why they would say it. So the history of the word ghetto comes from what? Italian. It's a place. It was a place in Italy where they held the Jews, where they kept Jews, Israelites. So the reason they put that above ghetto above your door is because they know you black people who they put there are Israelites. They know who we are, and they know because those people are in a position of power. Let me show you in the scriptures. Let me Deuteronomy 28. I read from verse 1. This is how you know you're an Israelite. Not because I told you, not because my father told me, not because we worked it out, not because we think and feel. Start from verse 1.
Deuteronomy chapter 28 and read it from verse 1. And it shall come to pass.
What?
And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God.
So if you listen diligently, that means you don't just listen and it goes in one ear and out the other. If you listen and take in what he's saying, read.
To observe and to do all his commandments which I command thee this day,
To do everything that the Most High, that God commands us to do, read.
that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth.
So the Most High said to the Israelites, if you listen to what I say and do what I say, I'm going to put you above everyone. Are we above everyone right now? No, that's right, we're at the bottom of everyone, because no matter where you find us, in any country, go to India, China, Brazil, Russia, no matter where you find us, we are the lowly people. In this society now, you want to buy clothes, who do you have to go to other nations? You want to get a passport or a driving license, who do you have to go to? Everybody else apart from our people, exactly.
And just backtracking, like wherever we are, right, what do they call it? Ghetto.
Urban ghetto, that's right. So you know this is talking about us, read on. So let's listen. Remember, this was written thousands of years ago. How did they know? That's how you know that it was inspired by the Most High. It was inspired by the person who created the planet. And you see, you want to find out history. You've got a craving to understand. The other nations don't care. They walk by and they don't care. They're going to buy whatever they're going to buy. They're going to do whatever they're going to do, and that's more important than saving their soul. 100%. Read on. Let me give you some understanding, because you're crazy.
And all these blessings shall come on thee and overtake thee, if thou shalt hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God.
And then he goes on to say the blessing. So he's going to start to tell us the blessings. If we do what he says, these blessings are going to come us free. Just read a couple of them and then we'll jump to
Blessed shalt thou be in the city, and blessed shalt thou be in the field.
And there was a time period where we actually were doing what the Most High said. When King David was ruling. So at that time period, we were blessed because we were doing what the Most High said. Now jump to verse 15. So there's loads of blessings. You can read that. Deuteronomy. Read the second one as well then.
Blessed shall be the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of thy ground, and the fruit of thy cattle, and the increase of thy kine, and the flocks of thy sheep.
That's right. So then all these...
So that means your children are going to be blessed. Because it says the fruit of your body, your cattle, right? So any blessings the Most High gives you, like... Because back then, remember, it wasn't like we're living now, and stuff like that. We had cattle and stuff like that. So he was saying that the stuff that he gives us in terms of like cattle and stuff like that, we'll be blessed in that. Because that's how we used to trade back in the day. Your wealth wasn't determined on money. No. Your wealth was determined on the fruits of the earth. Mm-hmm. That's how your wealth was defined. So the Most High would bless you, right, with land, and you'd have fruits, you'd have cattle, you'd have all of those things, and that's how you traded. That's how you traded, right, through that stuff.
Read on.
Right.
So what he's saying, and you understand that, because now, you know, all the things they're pushing now about money, everything's regarding money, and what are they trying to do now? They're trying to shift from money to put you into digital currency, because they know once they have a control over your food, how you get shelter, how you get clothing, they know they can control you.
Right.
Right. You talk about Mount Zion and going to Kenya and like what he's trying to do for people to open their eyes and listening to like.
But Mount Zion ain't in Kenya.
This is Mount Zion. You see here. It's not in Kenya. It's in Jerusalem, in a place called. And that's the point. We're not telling you this from a picture. Like we've never. We have travelled. We've gone on a plane, and we've gone there. Not only have we gone there, we've gone there 4 or 5 times, and we took the scriptures and we made sure that where this place is matches the scriptures. So this isn't. We're not telling you what we think and feel. We're not telling you what the government have told us. We're not telling you what we heard on the news.
We've gone to go research it.
We've gone to go research it. So this is actually Mount Zion, and this is our whole.
So we'll show you the scriptures about that once you've gone through the Deuteronomy 28. So
let's finish.
We're going to finish this out first, and then we'll go to Mount Zion for you.
Because you need to know your Israelites.
So we're going to go to the curses.
Yeah. So we're going to jump to the curses. So it's told you the blessings that we would have had, and we did have blessings when David was in.
So now this is how you're going to know, right, that you're an Israelite, right?
Jump to
This is how you're going to know. Yeah. So we'll go to 15 first, and then we'll go to verse 45.
Yeah.
But this is how you're going to know now, right? And we'll explain how you know through the curses, right? Because we're not blessed right now. Are we? Not in the situation we're in. We're not blessed, right? It's the curses that tell us who we are, right? And show us who we are.
Bring it out.
This is Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 15, and it says, "But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee." So the Most High said that if we don't keep his commandments, right, which he gave us, then these curses are going to come upon us, right, and overtake us. Meaning they're going to follow us wherever we go, right? That's what it means, right? And our offspring as well. So any seed that comes forth from us, they're going to be in that same situation. So you ain't the same. You're not the exact same person that was back in those days. That was living back in those days, are you? You're offspring from them, but you're still feeling the effects of those curses, aren't you? Now,
so like that's our father. Yeah, and even though we weren't directly put in slavery, we're still feeling the effects of it. Mm-hmm. So my dad said the same things he taught us, and we might have looked at him and said, well, maybe my dad's being a bit harsh. Maybe he's looking at those people and he's being a bit harsh, and then we grow up and the same things he told us was going to happen to us. Mm-hmm. So even though someone's less qualified than me, even though someone don't know as much as me, they're above me. Because they have what's called nepotism, or they have their circles, they have their family in high position. And us, we struggle to get anywhere. Why? And then people go, oh, it's just, you lot just have a chip on your shoulder. That's what they'll say to you. They'll tell you have a chip on you, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. That's what they'll tell you. Stop pretending that it's about slavery, but it was. Because the same things they put in place back then is still around today. Have you ever heard about redlining? So redlining is to do with housing, and they would only let certain people buy houses in certain areas. So Negroes specifically, they would keep in certain areas. That's why they can call them the ghetto, because they know who's there. If you wanted a house in a rich, white, affluent, so-called affluent area, you wouldn't be able to buy it. Not because you couldn't afford it. You might have all the money to afford that house, but they still won't let you buy it. Because it's called redlining. They keep people in certain areas. They know what they're doing. You get it? And that's what I'm saying. Everyone, even though we're at this position, there's people in positions of power and money who know all this stuff like the back of their hand. They've read the Bible. They know it inside and out. This ain't a book of, like I said, my dad said, it's not a book of religion. It's not fairy tales. Because that's what we were taught growing up. You hear about the flood. You hear about the miracles that happen. And you look at it and go, okay, that could never happen. Turning bread to wine, blah. None of that could happen. It's all fairy tale. And that's how we grow up thinking that it's old. And that's why when they tell you about heaven and hell, they teach you that heaven's in the air, in the cloud, and then hell is beneath ground. That's not in the Bible. No. So let's read it on, because that's a whole other topic that we could go into. But to stop going off track.
Right, so we're going to go to verse 45 now.
Read.
Right, and it says, "Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and pursue thee, and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep his commandments and his statutes, which he commanded thee." Right, so he says that these curses are going to overtake us and follow us, like I said. Right, then he says, "And they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever." So he says they're going to be upon us for a sign. Right, it's going to be on us for a sign, meaning that in this time, it's gonna be apparent who we are through these curses.
That's
Right.
Right? It's gonna show us who we are.
Right. So when you look at the people, if you look all around the world, and then you look at the curses that are there, it only fits one people. It only fits one people. Right? Period.
Right? And then it says, because thou servest not the Lord thy God with joyfulness and gladness of heart for the abundance of all things. So because we didn't serve the Most High or go to Him for everything, because He was giving us everything we needed within the blessings, right? So we shouldn't have been going anywhere else for anything, right? But our problem was we didn't listen, right? And we went amongst the nations, right? And we were taking on their customs, right? And their ways. And because we took on their customs and their ways, we departed from the Most High. So we moved away from Him, right? So we started to serve other gods, other idols, other images, and stuff like that, rather than serving the actual living power that created the heavens, right? So then it says, therefore, so because we didn't serve the Most High for everything, it says, therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee in hunger. So when you want food, right, who do you go to? You go to the other nations, right? Our people don't really own any shops or anything like that.
And even if we do own shops,
we don't have these farms and stuff like that. So we don't get like we don't have farms, we don't have cattle and stuff like that. We get all of our stuff from other people, from other nations.
Like Wall Street, America.
Yeah.
Like they went in there one day,
Tulsa.
killed everyone in
Yeah.
Tulsa,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
burned it all
Yeah.
out, right?
Right.
Because it was too profitable.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they're us. They are us. They're the same people.
We were scattered all over. See that map there? We were scattered all over the world. You'll find us in India, China, Brazil, and wherever you find us scattered, we're still going to be at the bottom. You know why? Because it's a curse from the Most High, from God. Because we didn't do what He said. We didn't do what He said. So let's finish this off, and then you know I'm going to give you some of the commandments, because as an Israelite, because you're an Israelite, and that's not, there's no if, and, or what. It's not, oh, thing. You're an Israelite, your father's from Jamaica, your father was was taken in slavery, or your family was taken in slavery and brought to Jamaica. You're an Israelite because they knew who they were taking. Have you ever heard of Christopher Columbus?
Yeah.
So what have you heard about Christopher Columbus?
All this stuff that he discovered, all this, he was a criminal.
Right,
man.
right.
He was a bad criminal.
Exactly.
And he's just
Exactly, he's the devil, that 100%. And there's even a song from Jamaica that says Christopher Columbus is a damn blasted liar. You ever heard that song? Christopher Columbus was a damn blasted liar. That's a whole song, and it's out there. They play it on the radio. You can hear it. You can go and research.
And translated his name to confuse people as well. Because that wasn't his name. His name was Cristobal Colon. His name was Cristobal Colon. So when you go into the history and you find out about him, you find out he didn't even set foot in the Americas when they say he discovered it. The most he did was went around the Caribbean islands. That's the most he did. And he didn't discover that place. He knew he was down there. He knew he was down there.
How do you know?
Right? Because he was reading something called the Apocrypha. Right? So there's something called have you heard of the Apocrypha? Before? No? So you see this book right here, right? This is the King James Version of the Bible.
oh, it's the Apocrypha, the books that didn't get in.
Yeah.
So it was taken out.
Yeah,
So
took
it was,
out.
originally it was in it. Originally the Apocrypha was in it. Right? And he read a book in there, right? So there's a book in there called Esdras. Right, which is just another book of Ezra. So you've heard of the prophet Ezra, haven't you? Yeah. So it's just another book from Ezra, right? But in there, it talks about us going to a place, or our people going to a place where never man dwelt, right? After they were taken into captivity by Assyria, right? So some of them went back to Israel when they were taken out, but majority of them went to the Americas. But that's how he was citing his sources. He went to the Caribbean islands with Hebrew interpreters for the sole purpose of interpreting.
Why need to go there with Hebrews to the so-called Americans? Unless you know the people that spoke Hebrew. This is history, and what we're telling you is not what we get, but
You know, when you haven't heard it, when you haven't heard it, and you hear it, ears tonight, hang on a minute.
you are right. So what we need you to do, and what we're saying, I know it's a lot of information, that's why when I'm here, you're reading. Our job is to educate and miseducate. Because we were taught lies, not just by what we learned, but in school. We were taught lies in school, you know. How bad is that? That they told us in school that
they prepare you for this
their society.
Right, right,
slavery.
right, right.
You go to work at 9, finish at this, they
Right.
get a little portion of what they do in
They
profit.
make, yeah.
They make you, and then we're at the bottom of that.
Right, right, right.
And then so don't you question that? Surely that's not how we should be living.
That's why I tried to get into university doing social work. I did 1 year, looked at what teaching me and said, do you know what, I can't do this. It's not educating me. I might get a qualification, but you're not furthering my mind. You're keeping me in some sort of suppression to then go and suppress my own people.
Right, right.
You know,
You're not far from the Creator. You're not far. The Creator's waking you up. But the point is, when He puts His Spirit on you to wake up, you see, like how you walk past now and you've come across us, right? It's the Most High who's guided your footsteps for you to hear because this is what the gospel is. The gospel is good news. What's the good news? Is that the curses that were on us, right? A Messiah came to free us from those curses. So you know when they talk about Jesus Christ didn't come for everybody. He came for the house of Israel. He came for the scattered sheep, right? So that because we had to go through the curses. Why? Because the scriptures tell us that that His word, the Creator's word, cannot go out and come back to Him void. So whatever He says is going to take place. If you do something and He says this is a judgment for it, that judgment has to take place, right? So when Messiah came, right, He gave Himself as a sacrifice for us. So when we reach to the end of the curses, right, we would have a chance to redeem ourselves. That's what the gospel is. That's what the gospel is. And this is what you're hearing today. That you're an Israelite and there's a way out of the situation that we're in. There's a way out, right? But
I'm gonna give you some history. Won't keep you like I know. Yeah, and that's fine. And the important thing is you've got a daughter. Our job as Israelites is to teach our children. So like this is our father. We were in Christianity. He found out we were Israelites. He done the research, and then he brought us the research. And he didn't say to us, "Follow me." He didn't say to us, "You must follow me."
Walk this way. You know that. I don't come up here, you know.
Hey, no,
Because this for me seems like a bit of a bad place. You know what I mean? I usually walk around.
Yeah.
I'll just follow.
And that's how you know it's God, it's the Most High guiding you. So the point is, He never forced us. He said, go and research yourself. So that's what we're going to say to you. So I'm going to give you a card. Before you leave, don't leave without a card and a flyer. I'm going to give you both so you can research yourself. But let's get some history.
So this is from a book called Lost Tribes and Promised Lands, right? I'm reading from page 92, and this is about Columbus's crew, right? It says, we do not know much concerning Columbus's crew of about 90 men aboard the 3 ships, but at least one of them was an Israelite whose presence as such was not merely accidental. This was Louis de Torres, a convert of possibly only that year, who had once held a position with the governor of Murcia. He was said to have known Hebrew, Aramaic, and some Arabic, and had been brought along by Columbus specifically as an interpreter. So you had a Hebrew interpreter on that boat. Why? That's the question you got to ask yourself. Right? That's what you got to ask yourself.
So like you're saying, so all the things you can see happening on the planet right now are all about what they know. This book is not a book of fairy tales and things. So your mind should be saying, what can I teach my children? Like, so what can I teach my daughter? How can I show her how to follow the life? So
let's go to verse 68 now in Deuteronomy 28. So now we know that every one of our people, right, is serving the nations for everything, right? So in hunger, in thirst, in nakedness, so for clothing, and then in want of all things, because that's what the scripture says, right? So you can read through Deuteronomy 20, it'll tell you exactly all of it, right? So then you go to verse 68, and it says, so this is Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, right? When it says Egypt there, right, Egypt is a Greek word, right? Egypt's a Greek word, right? And it means bondage, right? So the Egyptians themselves, back in the ancient time, they didn't call themselves Egyptians, they called themselves Kemet, right? The Israelites, we called them Mitzrayim, that's what we called them, right? But the Greeks, they called them Egyptians, right? That's where that name comes from. But Egypt, all it means is to say that bondage, right? Because it is the house of bondage, right? So then it says, so let me read it again then now, with the understanding, right? So it says, and the Lord shall bring thee into bondage again with ships, right? So tell me, any people, right, that have been into slavery, right, on ships, right, on this colossal scale.
And that was in the Bible thousands of years ago. No other nation have ever been in slavery on ships.
Right? And this is how you know it's not the real Egypt, right? As well. Because why would you need, because where Israel is, why would you need to go to Egypt on ships? Why would they take you? You can walk down there. They can take you down there. Because it's landlocked. They're tied together. So you don't need a ship to go there. Right? And then also it makes it clear that you know it's not the actual literal place. Right? Because then it says, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see no more again. Right? Because when we were coming out of Egypt, right, the first time, right, or from the literal Egypt, right, he told us to look back because the Egyptians were coming after us, right, and we were afraid. So we look back and we go look back, right, because that place you're not going to see it again. Meaning we're not going to go into that same captivity again. Meaning it's not going to be the same as that. Right, so he's trying to give us understanding that this is not. I'm not talking about the Egypt that you're going back in. Well, you in then. I'm talking about a new bondage. That's what he's saying, right? So then he says, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies, right, for bondmen and bondwomen, meaning for slave men and slave women, right? And then it says, and no man shall buy you. And the word buy there means to redeem. So no man was going to come and redeem us, right? Because how many men have risen up, right, and they've been killed? Right, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, right? Marcus Garvey tried to do work, nothing. Couldn't force it. All the Black Panthers, Nat Turner, right? All these men raised up, right, tried to fight for us, right, and fight with us, and what happened to them? Assassinated. Got assassinated. Right, so this book here, right, is a book of culture and of our history and of prophecy of who we are, right, and tells you who you are.
Yeah, but given the good news, read Deuteronomy 30. The good news. Let's get the good news, because the good news is there's a way out for us. But there's stipulations to it. The stipulation, the things that we have to do, right? To please the Creator. Once we start doing those things, he says he's going to come and he's going to turn the captivity around.
Right.
That means he's going to bring us out of captivity and bring us back as a nation, right? Just read
So this is Deuteronomy chapter 30 and read it from verse 1.
Bring it out.
It says, and it shall come to pass, when all these things have come upon thee, the blessing and the curse, which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations, whither the Lord thy God hath driven thee, right? So he says, when these things have come upon you, right, the blessing and the curse, you know how we read Deuteronomy 28, and it outlines blessings and it outlines curses, right? So when we were doing the things the Most High told us to do, we were being blessed, right? So there was a time when we were doing the things the Most High said, and especially when, if you read about King David, especially when he was in rulership and power, right, we were doing the things the Most High said because he loved the Most High, right? Anybody that did anything out of order, he'd be on them, and he'd be telling them, that's off, that's wrong, right? Or we need to cut them out because they can't be amongst us, right? That's what he was staunch for the Most High, right? He'd do anything to please the Most High, right? That was the manner of man that David was, right? So then it says, so when you call them to mind, right, so when you remember the blessings, right, and the curses, right, because now we're looking at the curses because that's how we identify ourselves, right? So then it says, and shalt return unto the Lord thy God, and shalt obey his voice according to all that I command thee this day, thou and thy children, with all thine heart and with all thy soul, right? So he's saying, so when you remember these things, right, and then you follow the Most High, right, with all that Moses told us in that time, right, what the Most High told him to tell us, right, because this book right here, right, is in the first 5 books of the Bible, right, and the first 5 books of the Bible are Torah, right, and they were that was our constitution, or those were our what they say laws now, but they were instructions for how to live on the planet, how we should deal with the Most High, and how we should deal with our brothers, right, or our families, right. That's what it was there for. So it says when we remember now and we turn back and start to serve the Most High and listen to what He's saying, right? So then he's going to tell you what he's going to do here, with all, and thy children, with all thine heart and with all thy soul, that then the Lord thy God will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all nations whither the Lord thy God has scattered thee. So only then, when you turn to the Most High and start to listen to his instructions, right, then he will turn our captivity, then he will bring us back, right? But you have to turn back to him first. That is the stipulation. That's what the Most High said, right? So when we turn back to him, then he'll start to listen, right? And then he says, if any of thine be driven out onto the utmost parts of heaven, right? So the utmost parts of the earth. So when he says heaven, he's talking about the earth, right? So the furthest part of heaven, right? Then so we've been scattered across the four corners of the earth, right? So you're gonna find people in islands, the islands that are obscure, right? But they're gonna be there, right? So even if they're the furthest part, the Most High is gonna bring them back. Those that turn back to him anyway.
That's right.
And then it says, from the outmost parts of heaven, from thence will the Lord thy God gather thee, and from thence will he fetch thee. So even if it's the furthest place, he's going to fetch them. And it says, and the Lord thy God will bring thee into the land which thy fathers possessed, and thou shalt possess it. And he will do thee good and multiply thee above thy fathers. Right. So he says he's going to put us back in the land which he gave to our fathers. Right. Put us back in the land of Israel. Right. Because that is our land. The people that are there now, right. These people here, right, are not the real Israelites. They're not. Right, they call themselves Jewish, right? But Jewish, right? They take the word Jew, right? Say Jewish, but that word, right, only pertains to one tribe. So where are the rest of them, and why are they not looking for them? Do you know why they're not looking for them? Because they're not the Israelites. Because if they were, they'd be looking for the rest of the tribes, right? They'd be looking for them, but they're not, because they're not the real Israelites, right? It's a fake, a phony, right? And the Bible speaks about them as well, right? So it says here, and the Lord thy God will bring you into the land, right, which thy fathers possessed, and thou shalt possess it, and he will do thee good and multiply thee above thy fathers, meaning our blessings will exceed what our fathers had, right? And it says, and the Lord thy God will circumcise thine heart and the heart of thy seed, to love the Lord thy God with all thine heart and with all thy soul, that thou mayest live. So in that time, because the scriptures say, right, that he's going to give us a new heart, right, and that he's going to circumcise our heart, meaning that at that time, we're not going to need to learn anymore, right? Right now, we have to learn, right? We're stumbling because we don't understand anything at this point in time, right? We're trying to get back to our culture, right? And because we've been so far flung from it or so far gone, right? And we haven't been keeping our culture for so long, we know nothing about it. It's a learning curve,
right?
It's a learning process,
right?
What other people do you know that don't know their language, don't know where they're from? If you speak to anyone who's of our nationality, you go, oh, where are you from? People will say, I'm black. And then you go to what airport can you go to fly to black? Get it? So that's what I said. We're so far from. You don't even know what language. What language do we speak?
Do you know, I had this discussion with some of my family, and I was saying, like, we got land in Jamaica, in the Spanish time, saying, like, we're going to get rid of the land. And I said, well, wouldn't it be good to find out our ancestry, to try and track them? And they're saying to them, it's too hard, man. It's too hard. You can't track it, man. You know, there's no documents.
There is documents.
And I'm like, what?
There is documents.
You know what I mean? There's got to be something.
There is documents. They've got.
My family's buried in the same place.
They've got all our documents under the Vatican. They've got all our documents under the Vatican. You know, I saw a show the other day, about 2 or 3 days ago, and it was this white Christian, and he worked for the CIA, right? And they gave him a task to go to the Vatican and get the records from the Vatican. And he said he went in there, right? And he goes, there was miles of information, right? And he goes, and when he opened up, he said, there's a book in there, right, called the Wisdom of Solomon, right? And he goes, and that book is not in the Bible. And he goes, and why isn't it there? And he goes, and when you read that book, it tells you everything, right, what's happening on the planet today.
Oh, wow. See?
Right? So they've got our records there, but you see, the Most High already knew we would lose our way, and already knew he would have to punish us. But even in the punishment he gave us, he made a way out. Even in the punishment, That's why when you read Deuteronomy 28, it says, I will put a yoke of iron on your neck. There ain't no nation that has had no yoke of iron on their neck. I will bring you back into captivity again on ships. There ain't no people that's been on no ships apart from the Israelites. Right? That's the only people you can find. You'll be sold to your enemies. Who's been sold on auction block? There's no nation that's been sold on auction block. Only our people that were sold on auction block. He said, I know the book. Another good book to read. It's called Without Sanctuary. Without Sanctuary, right? Because they used to take our babies, right? And they used to tie them, rope on them, and throw them in the river, right? And then the crocodile will come and then eat them, right? And then they pull the crocodile so that they can kill the crocodile, yeah, and then cheese and whatever. And they used to call crocodile bait.
Alligator bait. Alligator bait. Never heard of alligator bait? This is fact, look. That's an actual sign. Alligator bait. They kept our children, tied them up, and then used them, our children, to catch alligators so they could make clothes and bags and shoes. And you know the worst part about it is when we're in school, all they teach us is roots. They make you watch roots, and then forget about it.
And then they wonder why you're hungry.
Exactly, and that's my whole point, and that's how I know the Most High made you walk back. Because my thing today, not my thing today was, when I was coming out here, because I was the one who was speaking, I was coming out to tell people to remember, because this society tells you to forget. Like you said, as soon as you bring up your history, they say forget about it. But when you're in school, they teach you about 1066, Battle of Hastings, flipping the Holocaust, anything that happened in their history, they want us to know. But when you start talking about yours, you got a chip on your shoulder. You weren't in slavery, don't talk about it. With the Most High.
And let's talk about the Holocaust for a moment here. Because 6 million of them people did not die.
Exactly.
In that.
They didn't even.
There wasn't even 6 million people in the land, right? And the fact that, because if you listen to their history about it, right, they say that the bodies were cremated, right? There's no way they could have cremated 6 million bodies that quickly. No way, it's impossible. I spoke to somebody that used to be working at crematorium,
right.
and they've said it to me, you know. They literally said to me, you can't. There's no way they could cremate 6 million bodies that quickly. No way.
Plus, there's historic documents that predate when they said that all those Jews died, so-called Jews died. That says 6 million. You can find those documents. I know. Before you leave, let me give you an answer. Because there's a website on there.
What's your name? Craig, keep in touch, man. Keep in touch. The Most High wants to wake you up. He wants to give you the promises. So, because we have a lot of Israelites come past, they take the flyers, they take the card, but then we don't hear from them. But the problem is that if you don't take hold of the blessing, right? If you don't take the blessing, right? The Most High can't give it to you. You have to.
I need. The thing is, I need the education. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I've got a massive family, man.
Yeah.
If I'm the first seed that's planted, I need to be passing this
Right,
down.
right,
You know,
right.
and that's what we need.
Right,
Because
absolutely.
we talk about it and we're angry, but we don't know why we're so angry.
Right.
Because we haven't got the education.
Right.
So let me please.
There's a number on there, there's a website on there. The number on there will go straight through to us. So call the number if you've got any questions. Make sure you do, and that's why you're saying, because we spoke to loads of people, gave loads of cars out. Yeah, that's fine, that's good. I expect that, because like you said, you've got a big family. Even if you can get one of your family to know they're Israelites, that's a blessing. That's a blessing. Get in your daughter, make sure you tell your daughter you're an Israelite, because you're her father and you're an Israelite. Your offspring will become an Israelite. The Israelites like saying, that's my father. It doesn't matter. And the point is, when you become an Israelite, it's not that you just become an Israelite and you get access to heaven. We still have a role to do. We still have to do what's right. But the fact that we know, we've been taught lies our whole life. That's why we're keeping Christmas, Easter, all these things are pagan. They're nothing to do with our history and our
Right,
ancestry.
right. Worshipping devils.
They're worshipping devils. So we need to come out of that. So the fact that you've come, and I know for a fact because the things you've said, no one could have made you say. There's things I was thinking about and things I was going to talk about anyway. And you, like you said, you never walked this way. No, walk this way. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. Thousands of people want to walk out. I know you are. Make sure, bro. Please pray. Please.
So I've got this. I feel like to come in out of my head, I need to go and talk to
And
somebody
then,
else.
and then get the kingdoms in Revelation.
Yeah.
Just so
And then you're going to give them the information and bring them. Because we're going to be, because every, like 2 weeks out of the month, we're going to be down here. So obviously now, we're going to keep all of down here. So it's going to be cool. Yeah, call the number in so you'll know definitely when we're going to be down here.
And just, you know, just before you go, I just want to give just two really quickly, alright? This is just to let you know, right, that the book is for you, right, and for our people, right? It's not for anybody else, right? So this one right here, right, this scripture is the Messiah talking, right? This is Jesus Christ, who they call Jesus Christ, right? So this is Matthew chapter 15 and verse 24, and it says, "But he answered and said, I am not sent, but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel." Right? So he said, I am not sent, right? So first of all, he was sent, right, by the Father, right? But he wasn't sent to everybody. He was only sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, right? Because our people are lost. They don't know who they are. They don't know where they come from. They don't know their roots, don't know their history. So that's the reason why they have to be saved, right? They're not, the rest of the nation, they don't need to be saved. What are they being saved from? Nothing. They can do what they want to do. They know their culture. They know their history, right? They're not lost, right? Exactly. Right? So that's the Messiah talking himself. So when people say they believe in the Messiah, right, or Christ, right, they don't believe in him because if they do, they believe on the words that he's saying. Do you know what I mean? If they're gonna say they believe in his words, then they believe that. That's right. So let's go to Revelation 21, right? So this is the end. This is the end goal, right? The end of the matter, right? This is end times now, right? So this is Revelation chapter 21, right? And I'm reading from verse 9, and it says, "And they came unto me, one of the 7 angels which had 7 vials, full of the 7 last plagues, and tortured me, saying, Come hither, and I will show you the bride, the Lamb's wife. And he carried me away in the spirit to a great and high mountain, and showed me that great city, the holy Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God." Right? So you see in this vision, right? And you see in Jerusalem come down from heaven, right? And it says, having the glory of God, and her light was like unto stone most precious, even like a jasper stone, clear as crystal, and had a wall great and high, and had 12 gates. Right? So it says it's got 12 gates, and it says, and at the gates were 12 angels, and names written thereon. Right? And then it says, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. Right? So on those 12 gates is the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. So the people that are going to be entering into that kingdom are going to be of one of those 12 tribes, right? Which is the Israelite. Right? So that's who it's about.
And that's what the kingdom of heaven is. When we go back into rulership, when we get back our kingdom and we become back as a nation, that is the kingdom of heaven. Because that same kingdom is going to run this world, and we're going to dictate to the nations how to serve the Creator. That's what's going to happen. Right.
So pray, expecting what you heard today, not a light. It's a blessing. It's a blessing. Make sure you pass the information on to you. You're Israelite, and it's the first time you heard it's a blessing.